What's up, gang? A new edition of Rebelle is here. Rebelle 8 is in early access, so, it's early access, but I'm still going to count it as launched, because you can go buy it right now. Rebelle 8 is out, and I have quite a few thoughts on this, and I wanted to cover this partly as a review, but also as kind of a look at the early access. Now, they're still going to be changing a few things, maybe adding a few things, just doing kind of the maintenance, getting feedback from the community that are getting it in their hands right now to really push to final in September. So you're able to purchase it now. It's going to roll over to the final version in September whenever it does come out. But I thought this would be a great way to look at it fresh off the presses, be able to talk about it in regards to, I'm an old school Rebelle user. I started using it in Rebelle 3, and I've been fortunate enough to be a beta tester in it since Rebelle 5. And name in the credits, all that good stuff, but help develop this software to be the best traditional-esque painting software for digital painters. And we're going to take a look at that. We're going to take a look at some of the new features. I'm going to give my overall thoughts on it. How does this compare to, let's say, Rebelle 7, or if you have an older version, Rebelle 5 or 6, something like that? Is it worth the upgrade? Is it worth jumping into Rebelle 8? And then also, is it worth jumping from Rebelle 8 to Rebelle 8 Pro? What features does that get you? Stuff like that. So just overall, we're going to do a time lapse. We're going to talk about my time with Rebelle 8, what I'm liking about it. And we're just going to take a look and see how this early access has been treating us. So let's dive right in. All right, I'm excited about this, guys. I've been beta testing Rebelle 8 Pro for, 3 months now, maybe a little bit longer than that, and have a lot of paintings under my belt with it, a lot of sketches, a lot of things like that. And finally wanted to finally have the opportunity, I should say, to talk about it. Well, it's been under NDA, non-disclosure agreement, for a while. So I'm excited that we're actually able to talk about our experiences, kind of show some time lapses, things like that. So for this, I'm doing a time lapse. I wanted to do just kind of it sounds weird. I wanted to paint a big rock. Rocks are very interesting to me, just simply because there's so many different variations of value, the shapes. You can get away with a lot. Nature is not very specific. Everything organic is a lot of fun to paint because it all has its own personality. So I'm kind of using this just off the top of the dome. I'm thinking, okay, I have my PureRef open and I have a few rocks, like from Pexels and Unsplash, Pixabay, some of those royalty-free sites. You just type in rock or canyon or something like that. And what I'm trying to do here is just make an appealing looking image, wondering about the composition, basically thinking in my mind, this would be maybe a fantasy landscape. And this would be a huge rock where some of the characters, whether it's like player characters for a D&D campaign, or, if it's a video game concept art, like where the player could go and meet with another player, like meet me by the huge rock in the fork in the road. You can't miss it. It's massive, but I wanted to really do this on the art side, just to play around with the values and edges and things like that without a lot of stress. So it's not for a client. It's not for a big project. It's just me wanting to paint. And, what better way than just do something off the cuff and record it. And that way I can use all my favorite things. You can see me use those, but it's no pressure. So it's just a very relaxing, enjoyable experience. And overall, I can say that's kind of my review of Rebelle 8 so far, is that it has been very relaxing and enjoyable. Now, I have used Rebelle since Rebelle 3. So I'm familiar with how it's set up and where are the brush panels and what's the layer panel and the visual panels and how can I change the wetness of my brush. I'm kind of used to that now. And, the great thing about it is carrying over from an older version of Rebelle, you're going to pick up Rebelle 8 really quick. Not a ton has changed in that way. If anything, they've added more features to aid in the process that you're already doing. So you're not having to reinvent the wheel. You're not going to have to relearn where all the buttons are and stuff like that. I mean, unless you've taken a long break from Rebelle, let's say you had Rebelle 4 and you're going to come to Rebelle 8, there might be a little bit of a learning curve. Or if this is your first version of Rebelle, yeah, it's set up a little different than a Photoshop or Clip Studio or, Procreate or something like that. So you're going to have a little bit of a learning curve, but it's well worth it. Rebelle does stuff that no other pieces of software do. And now with Rebelle 8, I would even put that even up a level. Like, this is truly next level stuff. Now, I am going to be talking about a lot of features that come with Rebelle 8 Pro. But before I get into that, I do want to talk about there's a few big major changes that come to every version of Rebelle. So if you just have, let's say, you have Rebelle 7 and you got an update to Rebelle 8, but it's not the Pro version, you're still going to get a few things that I think are like game changers. Namely, the brush size limit has gone up like over 400%. So your brushes used to lock in, I want to say it like, God, 900, 1,000 pixels maybe, which sounds like a lot. But whenever you're working on big, like 300 DPI poster size images and stuff, that's not a huge, amount of pixels to be able to work with per brush. And at the time, it was just a limit of the engine, the way the brush engine worked and stuff like that. Anything above that, you started getting some really weird stuff, like anti-aliasing artifacts and just stuff that they kind of broke. You know what I mean? The brushes just did not look right. But now you can push these brushes up to 3,000 pixels, and that's even at high DPI. And it looks fantastic. And you couple that with some of the speed improvements. So like Rebelle, okay, in my opinion, Rebelle is kind of a heavy painting program. And what that means, the more RAM you have on your computer, the better CPU, like the newer generation stuff. If your hard drive's a solid state drive, like Rebelle rewards you having a better computer. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're going to get better performance. You're going to get stuff like that. But I can say that it handles Rebelle files way faster than it used to, which sounds funny. But like opening and closing Rebelle files. So let's say whenever you save it as a native Rebelle file, let's say you have your reference window open and you have a color mixer window open and you have all these other side panels open. Sometimes whenever you would open up, especially in like Rebelle 5 and 6, if you had a lot of those windows open, if you closed out of Rebelle and then reopened it, it might take a while to remember all of the stuff that you had open and where. But Rebelle 8, even if it's a heavier program and it has more kind of processing power to it, it flies through Rebelle files. Like the moment you open it, give it 2 seconds and all your stuff's back up. Like, it's pretty great. I know there have been many handfuls of times to where I've had like a pending Windows update and I'll go and be like, man, I got to do this update. I'm in the middle of a painting, but I got to do this Windows update. It might help with, tablet drivers or who knows. It's always just a good idea to update your computer, right? So you save what you got and then you close out and then you restart the computer and then it may have taken a while to open it. But now it comes up pretty fast, and that's definitely a benefit because it gets you back to work. You know what I mean? There's some other stuff I'm going to make sure that, oh yes. So I have the feature list here because I don't want to forget a few of these. There's so many little things that are just quality of life improvements that the ones that I use a lot, you're going to see me use in this time lapse, but also I want to make sure I put a voice to it because like there's certain things. I think adding the recent brushes, you know how sometimes in, paint programs and even in Rebelle, it'll keep track of your colors. Here are the last 20 colors that you use. That way you can go back to it and like select it. Now it does the same thing for your brushes. So let's say you had a great setting on your oil brush and you did all this cool custom stuff. Then you went and did a watercolor wash. You came in with a pastel. You did some, maybe line art stuff. Maybe you came over and sketched it and you got the graphite and you did that. And then you're like, wait, what oil brush did I have earlier? because there's a huge selection of them. So you're like, wait, which one did I have? Now you have a window called recent, and you can go and you can find it, and it's great, So it's a super welcome addition. The symmetry tool they've added, and they've really kind of refined that. And it basically does what a few other programs can do, where you make this perfect symmetrical artwork by just working on half of it, which is really great, especially for like texture artists. If you're a texture artist for video games or movies or something, sometimes you have to have your stuff exactly symmetrical. Also, of course, vector art and things like that. If you're selling prints, if that's kind of your style, well, now Rebelle's got that symmetry tool. You know what I mean? But really, I think the main thing is, for me at least, the larger brushes are game changer. Like, I genuinely believe, even if you had Rebelle 7 and you love it and there's not a big reason to change, if you got it in your budget, go to Rebelle 8 just because of the brush size thing. Like, it's a big deal. You feel way more limited than you think whenever you can't scale a brush the way you want, especially when you're dealing with something like watercolor washes or maybe the impasto stuff. So I still highly recommend the upgrade if you're an old Rebelle user, specifically because of how well it handles Rebelle files and how well it scales up those brushes. But yeah, I mean, you got all the cool stuff, man, even on just the standard Rebelle. I mean, you got your better mixer palettes now. You got those new kind of performance upgrades that you see on that. Even though Rebelle is still kind of a heavy program, the performance has improved, in my opinion, because it's doing more, but it does it faster. And you even get the red, yellow, blue color wheels, and you get some customization stuff like that as well, even on just the standard version. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the Pro version. I've used the Pro version since Rebelle. God, when did they introduce it? Rebelle 6, maybe? I think Rebelle 5 was just kind of Rebelle 5, but then in Rebelle 6, they added a Pro version, which had a few additional things. I may be wrong on that, but sorry, I'm old and it's been a few years, right? So, yeah, I'm trying to think of what my favorite new Pro feature is, because there's a bunch of them. So the big one I want to talk about, and this works for everybody that's going to use Rebelle 8 Pro. My favorite thing, maybe out of everything in Rebelle, and there's a lot to love, is the NanoPixel Export. And let me tell you why. So the NanoPixel Export is the thing to where you can save out kind of a lossless version of your artwork at 4 times the resolution, right? So that's how it was in Rebelle 7. So you can go up to 4, maybe even 500% output. So if you had something in, 1080p, if you're working on or let's say you're at 720, you're working at 1280 by 720, and you want to up and export your stuff out to 8K, you could do that. I thought it was a perfect thing to be able to do if you're a painter that makes prints. If you go to, let's say, a Comic-Con, or you go to your local art gallery and you like to sell prints of your work to your fans, NanoPixel is a must. I genuinely believe that is an entire reason to buy Rebelle. You don't even have to use Rebelle to do the painting. You can import a PNG file, any sort of Photoshop file, a JPEG, export it out at 4 times resolution to your print shop, and you're done. 100%, if this is part of your business, if this is part of your art stuff and you're wanting to sell prints and make merch and all that stuff, buy Rebelle. If only for the NanoPixel stuff, because it used to be you could export it out at 400%, but now, good God Almighty, I'm gonna look at this up because I want to make sure I'm not over exaggerating this. Okay. So NanoPixel 2, basically it's the sequel to NanoPixel. You can export up to 2,000% larger images. So the export size is capped at 32,000 by 32,000 pixels at 300 dpi. That's insane. Guys, that's insane. And it's lossless. I don't know how. I don't know what wizardry has happened. I don't understand it, but I love it. All right. Genuinely, I think that's the whole reason you should buy Rebelle. Like, I'm going to talk about other cool stuff too, but you could probably hear it in my voice. I have a huge smile on my face because good Lord. So let's say I made a painting 5 years ago and somebody contacts me and they would like to license that artwork and they're going to make a big banner for their table and they want to use that as official artwork for their company, all that stuff, but they need a really large version of it. Instead of like, well, I guess I can, I'll give you the licensing fee for it. But now you think, oh my God, now I have to just redo this entire painting because there's no way that this thing from 5 years ago is going to scale up and look good on like a table banner. It's not going to happen. Well, now it will. You can open up the thing from 5 years ago, hit maybe 3 buttons to export this out at 2,000% larger. Send it off. You get the money. You know what I mean? This is such a game changer, guys. Holy crap. I don't think a lot of people are going to talk about it, which I find very bizarre. Because to me, as a pro artist, having the option to take any painting I have ever made, ever, put on social medias, whatever. If somebody requests, hey, do you have that as a print? No, but give me 3 minutes. I'll get it uploaded and you can buy it. Like, oh my God, it's a game changer. It genuinely is. I can't talk about it enough. There's other things I'm going to get to, but like, I cannot overemphasize how important that is. And let's say you have a lower performing computer. Let's say you don't have all the RAM in the world. You don't have the newest CPU. This means you can work smaller. You can work at 72 DPI at, 1,000 by 1,000. And then you can rock that bad boy up, get it to 20,000 by 20,000 on your export. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it makes it more applicable and available for everybody from all walks of life to be able to have the opportunity to make money with their art. I mean, I can't overemphasize it. That's next level stuff, man. So genuinely, I would put that as number one with a bullet. Like, that's the reason to get this software, period. Like I said, you don't even have to use it. You can just open up your image, export it out with Nano Export, and you're good to go with NanoPixel, and you're fine. It's great. But I would be remiss as an oil painter in real life, like my traditional oil painting. They've added 2 things that are game changers for digital oils. So much so that I would consider Rebelle 8 the best digital painting software on earth for oil painting. All right. And the 2 things are bristle brushes. So now there's a new engine that gives a little bit of variety in the way that your brush tip handles based on your pressure and sensitivity and all that stuff. So it's the same thing as maybe like a tilt function. However, each bristle can be controlled independently, just the same way it would be, let's say you were using, Gamsol on your oil brushes. You maybe had a little bit of liquid or something. Maybe this brush is a little more dried out than the other one. All of those settings where you can apply more wet or more oily, or what is the load of the brush. Not only does that change the functionality of your brush, now literally the way that you put the pressure down and bring it back up is going to dynamically change the way that bristle looks. It's crazy. So now there is a difference between a filbert brush and a fan brush and do you know what I mean? Like, the engine is so much deeper and more complex in how it's handling every single brush stroke. It's crazy. And then you couple that with the fact that you can have what's considered, they're 2 separate things, but I kind of put it into one, real shader and soft shadows. So soft shadows are basically a height map and how much impasto is going to like catch the light, and how is the shadow going to affect the canvas, and then what type of canvas recalculates how the impasto shadow is going to be. Now, I know that sounds like it's something that's been around for a little bit, because impasto has been a big deal for Rebelle in the past. But with this, the soft shadows, it looks eerily realistic. Like, we're at the point now to where, there was a while there, and not to throw anyone under the bus, but there's other painting softwares that do like thick oil paint, quote unquote. And even the older versions of Rebelles were kind of guilty of this thing, where it kind of looked gimmicky. It looked a little fake. It looked like it was a, filter that it just didn't look. Yeah, you could see a shadow, and yeah, the brush tip thing did a thing, but it didn't look like paint. It looked like this other thing, right? It's hard to explain. I hope you kind of know what I mean. It didn't look like somebody took a photo of a canvas of an oil painting. But now, whenever you mix this real shader stuff and the soft shadows, there are genuinely times, and I'm pretty well vetted in this stuff. I teach courses on it. I've made a career out of it for 5 years. I can kind of tell when a painting is digital or traditional. There are a few times on the beta board to where people were posting up, here's some little experiments. I just opened up the thing and I kind of put some paint down on the canvas and messed with the shaders and all that stuff. And I was like, wait, this is the digital one. Like, you didn't have a notebook out by your desk and put some, thick liquid on there. And it's fooled me. A few times I looked and I was like, so you didn't just take a picture of an oil painting? Like, you just did that just live in Rebelle. And it's a magic moment, even if it happens for a half second and you're like, whoa, wait, is this traditional? That's kind of that money that you want. Cause I've had many people that want to, hire me and stuff. And they're like, hey, we need it with the flexibility of a digital file, but can you make it look kind of as traditional as possible? Well, now with the soft shaders and the real shader, or the soft shadows and the real shaders mixed with the bristle brush stuff, mixed with all the customizations you could already do on your canvases and things like that. Dude, if you spend enough time with this, you could make complete master copies. You could do, you know what I'm saying? Like, sky's the limit now. I will say the performance doesn't take a hit necessarily, but the more of these really advanced features, even on the Pro version, and my computer's pretty good. I even upgraded the RAM. I went from 16 gigs to 32 gigs. Now I have an extra 3 terabyte solid state drive. So I've done a few things to kind of up my game on the PC side. If I start getting really, really, really in the weeds, I can sense a little bit of slowdown, even on my rig. And I have a 3060 graphics card, which now is kind of 2 generations old or something, because now I think they're in the 5,000 or 6,000s, and mine's a 3,000. So take that as you will. But it's good enough to play any game on the planet. I can do multitasking. I can run home servers. I can do all that stuff. But I do notice in the really thick mud of it, whenever I'm, a 2 gig, 3 gig big file in Rebelle, it can start to weigh down a little bit because it's just crunching so many numbers. And it's, all these different, algorithms are running in the background to make this soft shadow look like this and do this. So it's not a knock against the program. It's more of a knock on me for not making up my mind and picking, this is the effect that I want. I want to get in the program and I want to play with everything, but it starts to bloat up after a while. And like I said, it's not a problem on the software side. It's just me not really dialing in and getting on it. So I've never had a crash, even during beta testing. Knock on wood, I have not had a Rebelle crash with Rebelle 8. I have in the past with Rebelle 5 and 6. I did have some crashes every now and then, especially if I was using the pencil tools and stuff. But as of right now, once again, knock on wood, some of the old glitches that I used to have on older versions of Rebelle are not present in Rebelle 8. It's not to say I won't find some new ones, but I have put it through its paces over the past 3 months. It's held up like a beast. This is even the beta side of it. It's worked extremely well for me. And I couldn't be more pleased with it, really. I just did want to bring up kind of bloat is kind of a harsh word, but just be very wary. If you're wanting to mess with every big volumetric shader type thing that the program can do, after a while, it's going to start buckling a little bit. And that's just the nature of it. It's nothing near as bad as Corel Painter used to be. That thing used to crash out all the time under its own weight. But yeah, like I said, I have not run into that with Rebelle 8 so far. And yeah, I've had really stable experience with it. So that's definitely a thumbs up for me. But yeah, and like even stuff like it can talk better with Photoshop now. There used to be a PSD export button in Rebelle like 7 and 6. That's still here, but now it works even faster. I don't use it a lot because really the way I use it, I used to be able to export all the layers and stuff, but now there's only specific things I need to export, so I don't have to worry about it all that much. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I'm going to have a link to the website. It's going to give a full rundown of all the differences between Rebelle 8 Standard and Rebelle 8 Pro. I'm also going to link to kind of the price. If you're upgrading from an old version of Rebelle, it's going to be a certain price. But if you're buying it brand new, it's going to be this price. And if you go from Rebelle 8 and you like it, and then later on you want to get Rebelle 8 Pro, that's an upgrade price. It's not, so all that stuff. I think they put out a video recently, kind of going over all of that. So I may link that if I can find it. But I'm going to have it all linked in the description. So if you have questions on the pricing and how all that works, feel free to go check that out. My whole thing is just, I want to say my overall thoughts on Rebelle 8. It's the best version yet. And I know I say that every version, right? But they genuinely continue to improve. I don't understand how Escape Motions does it. They add stuff that I have no clue how they even came up with that idea. Like, oh, that's genius for thinking about that. Like the real shadows and stuff, I thought we already had it pretty good as far as like the impasto control and stuff like that for thick brushes and the oil paint. But dude, this is a whole different animal. The way it mixes, especially if you mix it with the pigment blending mode, man, some of this stuff is chunky. Like, it's good. You look at it and you're like, I would buy that painting. I want to go see that painting in a museum. And this is even just quick sketches that people on the forums have done. So go check out the Escape Motions forums. Go check out the art, add your own art up there. You can make your own profile. You can do all that. Just look at some of this gorgeous stuff that people were making. And hopefully I'm going to be able to really kind of hone in and figure this thing out, man. I get more and more excited every time I use this program just because, it has a really good feedback loop. Every time I try something, I'm rewarded somehow. Do you know what I mean? And that's always a fun feeling because it makes you want to try more things. It makes you want to stretch out a little from your comfort zone. And then whenever you're rewarded with good feedback, or you have a moment to where you do like a random brushstroke and it kind of answers all the questions. You know what I mean? You have that aha moment of like, oh, that's how you do that. Or, oh, I tried this Frank Frazetta technique, or I tried this Bob Ross technique. And then you try it and it kind of works and you see it and you're like, wait, oh man, well, maybe if I just tweak this, maybe put this here. And then you start fueling that energy. You start adding gasoline to the tank, right? It gets you further, faster. You're more dedicated. You want to do this stuff because it's more fun. Yeah. And I've been having a blast, man. I mean, it's a lot of good stuff. I mean, it's all good stuff, really. Like I said, if you have a quite a bit older computer and maybe some of the older versions of Rebelle have been a little heavy for you, Rebelle 8 is going to continue that trend. And if you don't have it within your budget to upgrade your computer, I should say, if you don't have like the hardware money or something like that, it may still be worth it to get Rebelle 8. If only for that additional NanoPixel export. You don't even have to use all the fancy real shader, this and that. Like, it's cool, but the functionality of the standard version is still outstanding, and in my opinion, still the best in the class. So it does work a little better, in my opinion, than something like Art Rage or PaintStorm Studio. I'm also a big fan of like the Memi Leo brush packs for Krita. I would genuinely think, I'm trying to think of performance, and I haven't crunched the numbers or had, my processor stats up or anything doing this, but I want to say they perform about the same as far as like CPU load and graphics card load as the Memi Leo brush pack. So if you've tried that brush pack, the free brush pack on Krita, and I have a few videos about it, and if that performed well for you, I think you're going to do pretty well with Rebelle 8. I think they are very similar in the way that they handle certain things. Now, if you're fine with just the Memilio brush pack, or you have Art Rage, or you have something, is Rebelle the do or die that you must buy and it's going to like change your art life forever? Not necessarily. If you're eyeballing something, like you really like how the watercolors look, if you really want to try those like more dry pastels, the way the canvases, you can now switch canvases on the fly in the middle of a painting and in real time kind of see that feedback on how those paint textures are doing stuff differently, which is a great addition, by the way. It gives you more control. Rebelle 8 gives you the most control I've ever seen in getting that like tradigital look, that mix of traditional and digital. So in that regard, it's very much worth it. Now, if you're on a tight budget, if you're a student, if you can't afford it, no worries. You're still going to make beautiful art with what you know and what you love. But if you want a little bit of that chaos, if you want a little bit of like the crazy bristle brushes, if you want a little bit of the real shadows and the soft shadows and the real shaders and, a little bit of the pigment blending, and you want to introduce some of that stuff, I highly recommend Rebelle 8. And if it's your first version of Rebelle, this is the perfect spot to jump in. I genuinely don't know how they're going to improve this. It has everything that I would want, I think. Yeah. After the learning curve of kind of learning where your layers are and what happens and these settings and what does that setting mean and how does that affect this, and once you dig in a little bit, it's its own infrastructure, it's its own thing. But I think that's a good thing. If you have a toolbox, you want a variety of tools. Do you know what I mean? That's why I have like 19 painting softwares, because everything does its own thing particularly well. You know what I mean? And Rebelle is, I think, the most, besides Photoshop, which is kind of, you can break that thing to do whatever you want. But I would say Rebelle, as far as the out of the box experience of being more traditional painting, it's the best art program I've ever used. And I know I'm a beta tester. I know I could be biased or whatever, but I genuinely think if you just got your new computer, if you just got a new tablet, whether it's a touch tablet or a monitor, and you want one piece of software that can make your artwork have that traditional feel, and you only have budget for one, just one, I always recommend Krita, just because Krita's free. Have that on your hard drive as well. But if you were just to buy one, it would be Rebelle. I can say that beyond a shadow of a doubt. So if you're new to it, welcome. If you're an old guard like me, is it worth the upgrade? I would say absolutely, especially if you sell stuff. If you make prints, if you go to cons, if you are in conventions and stuff, and if you sell any prints of any sort, maybe on Imprint or Redbubble or whatever, yes, without question, it's worth it. But if you're, let's say, on Rebelle 7, you're kind of tight on money, or even like Rebelle 6, you're a little tight on money. And while the new features look really cool, it's going to be quite a few months until you can upgrade. Fine. I would say save the money. It's fine. It's going to be here. You know what I mean? And they're going to be improving stuff. You're going to get, whenever you do buy Rebelle 8, you get a whole year of the updates and stuff, and any of the upgrades that they make to it absolutely free. And usually what they do is, instead of like making you buy it again or something, by that time Rebelle 9 will probably be out. You know what I mean? So they work on a pretty good, like maybe not even annual basis, but maybe like 16, 18 months or so. So you get enough time to learn this one, then you can jump over to the next one. So, and hey, if you had a copy of Rebelle 7 and you bought it before, I think, May of this year, you might have Rebelle 8 for free. So go check your account. Like I said, I'm going to link that video and those websites that kind of explain all of that, like jumping from one version to another. But yeah, just read up on it, because you might already have it. And there you go. That makes your decision real easy. But I would say yes, highly, highly, highly recommended. It is the best that Rebelle has ever been. Be sure your computer's kind of up to snuff, because with all these new toys, you're going to want the power and that horsepower to be able to play with them the way you want to. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, this is thumbs up all around, man. I'm loving Rebelle 8. I'm excited now that I can actually use it for client work. Like the cat's out of the bag, as it were. So yeah, get ready for some awesome portfolio stuff and some cool stuff for Magic and, you know, a few other clients I can't talk about yet. But once we get there, we'll get there, right? But yeah, hoping this helps you out. Leave any questions, of course. But I'm going to kick it back over to me. Yeah, another me to show you this finished painting. And then, yeah, we'll kind of wrap this thing up. So we'll catch you over there. So there you go. My thoughts on Rebelle 8, on the early access, and Rebelle 8 Pro, some of those features I was showing off. Hopefully this gives you a little bit more clarity on if this program is going to be right for you. Let me know in the comments if you are using Rebelle 8, or if you have an older version, or is this your first time ever being interested or purchasing a copy of Rebelle. I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Here's a picture of the painting that we made. So yeah. Pretty cool little landscape deal. Just kind of an exercise in values and stuff. But you know, we already talked about that. But anyway, let me know in the comments what you think, and we will see you next time. Peace.